The first body dropped at 3.9 kilometers. No crack of the rifle reached the frozen valley below. No muzzle flash pierced the whiteout. One moment. The mercenary radio operator was barking coordinates into his handset, directing mortar teams toward the pinned American operators. The next, his skull came apart in a pink mist that crystallized instantly in the -30 wind chill. His partner stared at the corpse for 3 full seconds before his brain registered what had happened. Then he died too. Staff Sergeant Elena Vance worked the bolt of her Chaitak M200 intervention, cycling another .408 round into the chamber. Her breath came slow through the balaclava frozen to her face. Ice crystals clung to her eyelashes. Her fingers, despite the heated glove liners, had lost feeling 20 minutes ago. None of that mattered. Through the night force atticoscope, she watched the mercenary formation below begin to fragment. They didn't know where the shots were coming from. They couldn't know. The math said it was impossible. If that opening hooked you, buckle up. This story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more incredible true stories of courage and hit that notification bell. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, 18 hours before Elena Vance rewrote the definition of impossible. The briefing room at Forward Operating Base Copperhead smelled like diesel fumes and burnt coffee. Outside, the Hindu Kush Mountains rose like broken teeth against a steel-gray sky. Snow had been falling for 6 hours. The meteorological officer was predicting the worst blizzard in 3 years, none of which mattered to Lieutenant Commander Marcus Stone. The SEAL team leader stood at the head of the tactical display. His jaw set in that particular expression Elena had learned to recognize over 4 deployments. It was the look of a man who believed his own legend and resented anyone who might complicate it. Primary objective is the weapons cache at grid reference 479er, Stone said, tapping the satellite imagery. Intelligence confirmed 17 crates of Chinese-manufactured HJ-12 anti-tank missiles, 40-plus PKM crew-served weapons, and estimated 200,000 rounds of 7.62 ammunition, all of it bound for Taliban winter offensive operations. Elena studied the terrain from her position against the back wall. She wasn't part of the SEAL element. She was Task Force Reaper's attached precision asset on loan from the Army's elite sniper program. A useful tool when the teams needed overwatch. A necessary inconvenience when they didn't. Stone clearly considered her the latter. Insertion will be via MH-47 Chinook at 0200 hours, he continued. Bravo element handles demolition. Alpha provides security. Total time on target, 18 minutes. We're wheels up by 0230, back at Copperhead by 0300. Questions? Chief Petty Officer Danny Morales raised a hand. The veteran SEAL had a face like crumpled leather and eyes that had seen 3 decades of combat across 4 continents. Weather window, sir? Narrows at 0400. Blizzard hits full force by 0430. We'll be long gone. And if we're not? Stone's expression hardened. Then we dig in and wait it out. But that's not going to happen, Chief. This is a precision operation with precision timing. Elena cleared her throat. Every head in the room turned toward her. Staff Sergeant Vance? Stone said, his tone suggesting he'd forgotten she existed. Something to add? The Overwatch position. She stepped forward, pointing at the ridge marked on the tactical display. I'm showing elevation of 4,100 meters, with direct line of sight to the cache location and the primary exfil route through the valley. Correct. That's where you'll be stationed. That's 3.9 kilometers from the valley floor. If something goes wrong, nothing's going to go wrong. Sir, at that distance, in these conditions, effective engagement becomes fantasy. Stone's smile didn't reach his eyes. I've read your file, Vance. I know you got some impressive numbers at the range. But this isn't Fort Benning. This is a Hindu Kush in winter, with thermal inversions, wind shear, and visibility that could drop to 0 at any moment. He turned back to the display. Your job is observation and early warning. You see something coming, you radio it in. That's all. Elena felt the heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice level. And if radio comms go down the storm, then you sit tight and let the professionals handle it. The room went silent. A few of the younger SEALs exchanged glances, uncomfortable with the dismissal. Chief Morales studied the floor. Elena nodded once. Understood, sir. But she didn't understand. And she wasn't going to sit tight. Because 18 months ago, she had followed orders just like these. She had watched through her scope as a Taliban ambush materialized around a Marine reconnaissance patrol. She had requested permission to engage at 2,300 meters, well within her proven capabilities. And command had denied her. Hold position. QRF is en route. She had held position. The quick reaction force arrived 11 minutes later to find 6 dead Marines, including her spotter, Sergeant First Class William Chun, who had taken 3 rounds to the chest while she watched through magnified optics and did nothing. The after-action review cleared her of any wrongdoing. She had followed protocol. She had obeyed orders. She had let her best friend die. Never again. Elena gathered her gear and headed for the armory. Behind her, Stone was already moving on to infill procedures, her concerns dismissed and forgotten. The armory at FOB Copperhead was a converted shipping container buried beneath sandbags and razor wire. Specialist Torres, the night shift armorer, looked up from his laptop as Elena entered. Vance, heard you're riding Overwatch tonight. That's the plan. She moved to the locked cage holding her personal weapon. You get the special ammunition I requested? Torres reached beneath the counter and produced a black case marked with red stenciling. 400 round of Hornady AMAX, .40 HATAC, hand-loaded by the Crane Division lab boys, according to your exact specifications. He set the case on the counter. This stuff costs more per round than my monthly car payment. Elena opened the case and examined the brass cartridges nestled in foam. Each one had been weighed, measured, and certified to within 0.3 of a grain. Consistency at extreme distance was everything. A variation of even half a grain in powder charge could mean missing a target by 6 feet at 3,000 meters. I'll need the cold weather kit as well, she said. Heated glove liners, balaclava with the integrated comms, and the chemical hand warmers. All of them. Torres raised an eyebrow. Planning on a long night? Planning for everything to go wrong. She spent the next hour in the ready room, preparing her kit with the ritualistic precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The CHATAC M200 was an engineering marvel, a bolt-action rifle specifically designed for extreme long-range engagements, with an effective range that theoretically exceeded 2,500 meters. In the right hands, under the right conditions, it could reach further, but 3,900 meters was something else entirely. Elena ran the numbers in her head as she cleaned and inspected each component. At that distance, the .408 round would be in flight for approximately 6 seconds. It would drop nearly 400 feet from its original trajectory, requiring her to aim at a point in the sky significantly above her target. Wind drift could push the bullet dozens of feet in any direction. Temperature affected powder burn rates. Altitude affected air density. Humidity affected everything. And she would be shooting through a blizzard. The math said it was impossible. But Elena had stopped believing it impossible 18 months ago when she watched William Chin bleed out in high-definition magnification. You're doing it again. The voice startled her. She looked up to find Chief Morales standing in the doorway, a steaming cup in each hand. Doing what, Chief? That thing where you stare at your rifle like it owes you money. He crossed the room and set one cup in front of her. Coffee. Real coffee. Not that instant garbage from the mess. My wife sent it from San Diego. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat seep into her bones. Thanks. Morales settled into the chair across from her, studying her with those ancient eyes. Stone's an ass. You know that, right? I've noticed. He's also one of the best operators I've ever worked with. 16 years in the teams, 9 combat deployments, 2 Navy crosses. The man knows his business. I'm sure he does. But he's got a blind spot. Morales sipped his coffee. Doesn't trust anyone outside the Brotherhood. Marine, Army, Air Force. Doesn't matter. If you don't wear a trident, you're a tourist. Elena set down her cup. Chief, why are you here? Because I saw your face in that briefing. And I've seen that face before on operators who are about to do something that's either going to get them a medal or a body bag. He leaned forward. Whatever you're planning, Staff Sergeant, think it through. Stone will bury you if you go off script. I'm not planning anything. Morales held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, just remember, we're the rescue package. Not you. If this goes sideways, your job is to stay alive until we can get to you, not play hero. Understood. But they both knew she was lying. The Chinook lifted off at 0147, 13 minutes ahead of schedule. Elena watched in the doorway of the operations center as the massive helicopter banked north, its rotors beating the frozen air into submission, and disappeared into the darkness beyond the perimeter lights. 30 minutes later, she was in position. The ridge overlooked the entire valley, a frozen ribbon of white winding between granite walls that rose 2,000 feet on either side. The weapons cache was located in a cave complex at the northern end, where the valley narrowed to a choke point barely wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. Through her scope, Elena could see the thermal signatures of Stone's team moving through the rocks below. They were good. She had to give them that. Nearly invisible even with magnification. Communicating through hand signals, covering each other's movement with textbook precision. At 0208, Bravo element reached the cave mouth. At 0212, the first charges were set. At 0219, the team began their exfiltration, moving south through the valley toward the extraction point. Everything was going according to plan. And then, at 0223, the world went wrong. Elena was scanning the western ridge when she saw them. Heat signatures where there should have been only rock and ice. A dozen at first, then 24, then too many to count. They were descending from prepared positions high above the valley floor, moving with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. Not Taliban, not insurgents. These were professionals. She keyed her radio. Overwatch to Alpha. I have multiple hostiles on the western ridge. Count exceeds 50 personnel. They're moving to cut off your exfil route. Static crackled in her earpiece. The storm was playing hell with comms, just as she predicted. Alpha, acknowledge. More static. Then Stone's voice, fragmented and distorted. Say again, breaking up. Hostiles on the western ridge. 50 plus. They're flanking you. A pause. Then, confirm visual on mercenaries' heavy weapons. The first PKM opened up at 0225, its distinctive chattering echo bouncing off the valley walls. Elena watched tracer rounds arc through the darkness, stitching lines of green fire across the snow. Stone's team dove for cover behind a cluster of boulders as the ambush closed around them. They'd been expected. Someone had leaked the mission. The kill zone was textbook. Interlocking fields of fire that covered every avenue of approach, with the SEALs trapped in a natural depression that offered minimal cover. Whoever had planned this ambush had access to detailed topographical data and intimate knowledge of American tactical doctrine. Elena's mind raced through the implications as she watched the firefight develop below. The mercenaries weren't advancing. They didn't need to. They had the high ground, superior numbers, and time on their side. All they had to do was maintain suppressive fire until the SEALs ran out of ammunition or the blizzard finished the job. Extraction was impossible. The storm had already grounded every helicopter within 100 miles. Satellite coverage had gone dark. The quick reaction force at Copperhead couldn't even get vehicles through the mountain passes. Stone's team was on their own, unless Elena could change the equation. She adjusted her scope, compensating for the distance, the wind, the cold, the altitude, the barometric pressure, the spin drift, the Coriolis effect. Her Kestrel weather meter gave her the raw data. Wind from the northwest at 18 knots, gusting to 31. Temperature negative 32 Celsius. Humidity 12%. Air density approximately 0.8 for kilograms per cubic meter. The ballistic calculations scrolled through her head like computer processing code. At 3,900 meters, she would need to aim 847 minutes of angle above her target, nearly 14 degrees. The bullet would take 5.8 seconds to arrive. In that time, it would rise, fall, drift, spin, decelerate, and, if she did everything perfectly, find its mark. If she missed, she would give away her position. The mercenaries would dispatch a team to eliminate her, and Stone's men would die anyway. But if she hit, Elena keyed her radio. Overwatch to Alpha. I have solutions on hostile command elements. Requesting permission to engage. The static stretched for an eternity. Then Stone's voice, clearer now. Negative, Overwatch. Your position is too valuable. Hold fire and maintain surveillance. Sir, I have clear shots on their coordinators. I can... Your 3.9 clicks out, Vance. That range is fantasy. A burst of gunfire nearly drowned out his next words. Hold position. That's an order. The radio went dead. Elena stared through her scope at the chaos below. She could see Stone crouched behind a boulder, returning fire with his 416 Hong Kong dollars. Chief Morales was dragging a wounded operator, Hendricks, the comms guy, toward better cover. Tracers crisscrossed the darkness like angry fireflies. The mercenaries' command element was positioned on a rocky outcropping overlooking the kill zone. She could see their leader clearly, a heavy-set man in winter camouflage, using hand signals to direct the encirclement. Next to him, a radio operator relayed orders to the mortar teams. Behind them, a spotter with thermal optics scanned the ridgelines for threats. He hadn't looked in her direction yet. At 3.9 kilometers, she was beyond the theoretical range of any sniper system they knew existed. That was about to change. Elena Vance made her decision. She settled her breathing, found the stillness between heartbeats, and placed her finger on the trigger. "Forgive me, Will," she whispered. The Chetak roared. 5.8 seconds later, the radio operator's head snapped back, and he crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. For a moment, nothing happened. The mercenaries continued firing, oblivious to the loss. Then someone noticed the body. Then someone noticed the blood. Then someone noticed the direction of the wound. And the screaming started. Elena was already working the bolt, chambering her second round. The heavy-set commander was grabbing his dead radio man's handset, shouting orders. She made the minute adjustments. Wind had shifted 2 degrees, gusting harder now, and fired again. 5.8 seconds. The commander's forehead opened like a flower, and he toppled backward off the outcropping. Panic rippled through the mercenary line. They didn't know what was happening. Couldn't know. The shots were coming from a direction they hadn't thought to cover, at a distance they believed impossible. 2 of their leaders were dead, and not a single muzzle flash had betrayed the shooter's position. The spotter with the thermal optics was finally doing his job, sweeping the ridgelines with frantic energy. Elena watched him through her scope, watched him search the darkness, watched him realize a horrible truth as his gaze swept past the position and kept going. She was too far away. Even thermal couldn't resolve her heat signature at this distance, not through the snow and the wind and the intervening atmosphere. She was a ghost. The third shot took out a mortar team leader who was trying to redirect his tubes toward the SEAL position. The fourth killed his assistant as he bent to check his fallen comrade. The fifth and sixth eliminated a PCAM crew that had been suppressing Stone's right flank. 6 shots, 6 kills, 35 seconds of flight time total. Below, the mercenary formation was beginning to fracture. Without their command element, without their communications, without understanding what was killing them, discipline was crumbling. Some fighters broke from cover and ran. Others huddled behind rocks, refusing to move. The coordinated ambush was dissolving into chaos. Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "Overwatch, what the hell is happening up there?" Elena didn't answer. She was too busy killing. The 7th shot missed. Elena knew at the moment she released the trigger. A gust of wind at the wrong instant, pushing around 3 feet left of her intended target. The mercenary sniper who'd been setting up a Dragunov position jerked at the impact beside him, ice and rock fragments peppering his face. He dove for cover before she could adjust. She cursed under her breath and moved to her next target. The miss would cost her. He'd know now that someone was shooting, would be looking for her, would warn the others. But she couldn't dwell on it. The 8th shot punched through a squad leader's throat as he tried to rally his men. The 9th caught a radio man who'd been desperately attempting to establish communications with someone, anyone, who could explain what was happening. 10, 11, 12. Each shot required complete recalculation. The wind inside the valley was behaving like nothing Elena had ever seen. Swirling, eddying, creating invisible corridors of calm and violence. One shot might drift left. The next might drift right. She was essentially firing into chaos and imposing her will upon it. Her hands had stopped hurting. That was a bad sign. Frostbite was setting in despite the heated gloves. Her face felt like a mask of ice. Her lungs burned with every breath of the frozen air. None of it mattered. Chief Morales' voice cut through the static. Stone's hit. Stone is down. Elena swept her scope toward the SEAL position. Stone was crumpled behind a boulder, clutching his leg. Dark blood stained the snow around him. Morales and 2 other operators were laying down suppressive fire, while a corpsman worked frantically to apply a tourniquet. She could see the mercenary machine gun crew that had wounded him. A DSHK heavy machine gun position on a ledge 200 meters above the valley floor. The 12.7 millimeters rounds would tear through the SEAL's cover like paper. 3,700 meters. Wind gusting to 38 knots. Angle, 47 degrees. She did the math in 1.3 seconds. Shot 13 took the gunner in the temple. Shot 14 killed his loader. Before he could scramble away, the massive weapon fell silent. Overwatch, this is Alpha. Morales' voice was ragged. I don't know what you're doing up there, but for God's sake, don't stop. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. Copy that, Chief. I'm just getting started. But she wasn't. Not really. She fired 14 shots and scored 13 kills. That was already beyond anything she'd achieved in training or combat. The ammunition she'd brought was finite. The mercenaries, though disorganized, still outnumbered the SEALs by a significant margin. And somewhere on that frozen battlefield, the sniper she'd missed was setting up to find her. Worse, she was beginning to see the shape of the enemy's real plan. The ambush wasn't designed to wipe out Stone's team. It was designed to trap them. The prepositioned forces, the interlocking fields of fire, the jamming that had killed their communications. This wasn't a hasty ambush. This was a planned operation, executed with intelligence that could only have come from inside the U.S. command structure. Someone had betrayed them, and whoever that someone was, they'd known exactly where the SEALs would be, exactly when they'd be there, and exactly how to cut them off from support, which meant they also knew about Elena. The thought had barely formed when she saw the movement on the ridge below. Figures in white camouflage ascending toward her position, moving in pairs, covering each other's advance with professional efficiency. They were coming for her. She checked the distance, 1,800 meters, and closing. At their current pace, they'd reach her in approximately 12 minutes. She had enough ammunition for maybe 10 more precision shots before she'd need to transition to her sidearm and prepare for close-quarters combat. 10 shots to finish the job. 10 shots to save Stone's team. 10 shots to prove that impossible was just another word for not trying hard enough. Elena Vance settled back behind her rifle and went to work. Shot 15 eliminated a mercenary team leader who was attempting to reorganize the assault on the SEAL position. She watched through her scope as his men scattered, leaderless and terrified. Shot 16 took out another mortar spotter, the third one she'd killed. Without their indirect fire capability, the mercenaries couldn't drop rounds into SEAL's position without exposing themselves to return fire. Shot 17. Shot 18. 2 more confirmed kills. 2 more holes in the enemy's command structure. 2 more reasons for the surviving mercenaries to question whether this fight was worth dying for. Below, the firefight was beginning to shift. Morales had taken command of the SEAL element, organizing a breakout toward the southern end of the valley. The extraction point was still 3 kilometers away, but at least they were moving now, fighting their way out of the kill zone 1 meter at a time. Elena tracked them through her scope, eliminating threats as they appeared. A fighter popping up to throw a grenade, dead. A machine gun crew repositioning, dead. A squad trying to flank, scattered by a near miss that sent rock fragments into their faces. She was down to her last magazine when the climbers reached 400 meters. Elena transitioned from the Chaytak to her secondary weapon, an M110 SAS chambered in 7.62 NATO. The semi-automatic rifle lacked the extreme range of her primary, but at 400 meters in closing, extreme range was no longer the concern. Survival was. She could see them clearly now, even through the thickening snow. 6 men in winter whites, moving in disciplined bounds, using the terrain like professionals. They carried AK-12s with suppressors and thermal optics. No amateurs, no conscripts. These were hunters. Elena considered her options. The ridge she'd chosen offered excellent fields of fire to the valley below, but limited cover from threats approaching from the north. The rocks that concealed her position from the mercenaries also funneled any approach into two primary avenues. She could hold them off, maybe, but not forever, and if she focused on them, she couldn't protect the SEALs. The radio crackled. Overwatch, be advised, we have visual on your position. Hostile element approaching from your north. I see them, Chief. 6 tangos, for 100 meters. Vance, don't be a hero. We don't leave people behind. I'm not being a hero. I'm being practical. Elena settled behind a boulder, sighting down the M110. The longer you stay in the valley, the more likely they regroup, get stoned to the extract. I'll meet you there. That's not. I've killed 18 of them tonight, Chief. 6 more won't change the math. Static. Then you're crazy, you know that? So I've been told. She cut the connection and focused on the approaching threat. The first mercenary died as he crested a ridge of ice, Elena's round taking him center mass. The 7.62 didn't have the dramatic effect of the .408. No pink mist, no theatrical collapse. But a man folded over and slid backward, dead before he hit the ground. The others scattered. Elena fired twice more, missing once, hitting once. For her left, they were good, spreading out, using cover, refusing to give her easy shots. She could hear them communicating in Russian, calling out her position, coordinating their approach. She moved. In Arctic warfare, mobility was life. She'd learned that at Mountain Warfare School in Vermont, practiced it in Norway during a NATO exercise, perfected it during 3 winters in Afghanistan. Stay in one place too long, and the cold would kill you as surely as a bullet. Move constantly, unpredictably, and you became a ghost here, then there, then nowhere. Elena sprinted 15 meters through the snow, dug behind a granite outcropping, and came up firing. Another kill. 3 left. Return fire stitched the rock beside her, fragment stinging her cheek through the balaclava. She rolled left, came up in a crouch, and fired twice. 1 hit, 1 miss. 2 left. They were coming faster now, abandoning caution for aggression. They knew she was running low on options. They knew the cold was slowing her down. They knew it was only a matter of time. Elena's magazine ran dry. She slammed in her last one, 20 round between her and death. She fired 3 times in rapid succession, forcing the attackers to ground, then sprinted again. The wind howled around her, drowning out everything except the pounding of her heart and the crunch of snow beneath her boots. A shape materialized from the wideout, a mercenary, close, too close. He was raising his rifle when Elena threw herself sideways, twisting in midair, bringing up the M110. They fired simultaneously. His round caught her in the left shoulder, spinning her around. Her round caught him in the throat. He went down spraying blood across the snow. Elena hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Pain exploded through her shoulder, sharp, electric, wrong. She tried to lift her left arm and found it wouldn't respond. The bullet had gone clean through, missing the bone but shredding muscle and tendon. She was bleeding badly, the hot crimson soaking into her white camouflage and steaming in the cold. 1 mercenary left. She heard him before she saw him, boots crunching through the snow, circling her position, looking for the angle. Elena pressed herself against the boulder, fighting to control her breathing, fighting to stay conscious, fighting to keep her weapon up with 1 functioning arm. American sniper, the man called out. His English was accented, Eastern European. You are wounded. I can see the blood. Drop your weapon, and I will make it quick. Elena said nothing. She was listening to his footsteps, tracking his movement, calculating his approach. 18 of my men are dead because of you. 18. Do you understand what that means? The contracts we will lose. The reputation we must rebuild. A pause. I will not make it quick. I change my mind. I will take my time. The footsteps stopped. He was close, maybe 10 meters, on the other side of the boulder. Elena gripped her M110 with her good hand, braced it against her thigh, and waited. The mercenary came around the corner fast and low, AK-12 sweeping the kill zone. He was good. He was careful. But Elena was better. She fired from the hip, 3 rounds in rapid succession. The first caught him in the knee, dropping him. The second went wide. The third punched through his chest. He fell forward into the snow and didn't move. Elena sat there for a long moment, breathing hard, watching steam rise from the holes in her shoulder. The cold was creeping in now. Not the surface cold she'd been fighting all night, but the deep cold that came with blood loss and shock. She needed to move. She needed to get to the extraction point. The radio crackled. Overwatch, this is Alpha. We are 800 meters south of your position and closing. What's your status? Elena fumbled for a radio with numb fingers. 6 tangos down. I'm hit, but mobile. Heading south to link up. Negative. Stay put. We're coming to you. Chief, the mission. The mission is over. Stone's en route to extract. We're coming back for you. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell them to keep moving, wanted to explain that every minute they spent on this frozen ridge was another minute the mercenaries had to regroup, but the words wouldn't come. The cold was too deep. The pain was too bright. She slumped against a boulder and let the darkness take her. Elena woke to pain in motion. Someone was carrying her, a fireman's carry, her wounded shoulders screaming with every step. Snow stung her face. Voices barked around her, urgent and professional. Overwatch is secure. Moving to extract. Copy. Dust off is spinning up. Weather window in 12 minutes. Tell them to hurry. She's losing a lot of blood. Chief Morales' face swam into view, concern cutting through his weathered features. Stay with us. Vance. We're getting you out. The team. Her voice came out as a croak. Everyone's alive. Thanks to you. He adjusted his grip. Jogging now, boots pounding through the snow. 18 confirmed kills at nearly 4 kilometers. In a blizzard, with wind gusts over 30 knots. He shook his head. They're going to write books about tonight. Stone. Leg wound. Hurts like hell, but he'll walk again. A grim smile. Already bitching about the cold. Good sign. Elena tried to process this information through the fog of pain and blood loss. They were alive. Stone was alive. The team was intact. The mission, the weapons cache, she managed, destroyed. That part of the op went off without a hitch. Morales' expression darkened. It's everything after that I have questions about. The ambush, it was pre-planned. Yeah, we noticed. Someone leaked. I know. His jaw tightened. And when we get back, I'm going to find out who. The helicopter materialized from the wideout like a mechanical angel, an MH-60 Black Hawk with its rotors already screaming. Hands reached down from the cabin, pulling Elena inside, laying her on a stretcher, while a flight medic went to work on her shoulder. She caught a glimpse of Stone on another stretcher across the cabin, his leg wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. Their eyes met. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. The Black Hawk lifted off, banking hard to the storm, racing the blizzard back to FOB Copperhead. Elena let her eyes close, let the darkness take her again, let the pain fade into something distant and manageable. She'd done what she'd sworn to do. She'd taken the shots. She'd trusted her skills. She hadn't let them die. The court-martial convened 6 weeks later. Elena sat at the defendant's table, her left arm still in a sling, her dress uniform freshly pressed. Across the room, a panel of 5 officers studied her with expressions ranging from stern to openly hostile. The charges were straightforward. Willful disobedience of a direct order resulting in unauthorized engagement of enemy forces. Maximum penalty, 10 years in military prison and dishonorable discharge. Captain Morrison, the prosecutor, stood before the panel with a thick folder of documents. Staff Sergeant Vance was given a clear, unambiguous order to maintain her position and hold fire. Instead, she chose to engage targets at extreme range without authorization, potentially compromising the mission and placing the lives of American service members at risk. Elena's defense counsel, a major from JAG named Torres, rose to respond. The defense does not dispute that Staff Sergeant Vance disobeyed a direct order. However, we contend that her actions were justified by the doctrine of necessity. SEAL Team Alpha was in imminent danger of annihilation. All communications had been degraded by the storm. Extraction was impossible. Staff Sergeant Vance made a tactical decision that saved the lives of 8 American operators. By ignoring her commanding officer's explicit instructions. By exercising independent judgment in a rapidly deteriorating situation. The arguments went back and forth for hours. Testimony was heard from Stone grudging, from Morales effusive, from the intelligence officers who had analyzed the aftermath of the ambush. Charts were displayed showing the positions of the dead mercenaries, the angles of the shots, the distances involved. At one point, an Army ballistics expert took the stand to explain, in exhaustive technical detail, why Elena's shooting that night should have been impossible. At 3,900 meters, he said, adjusting his glasses, the bullet is traveling approximately 1.4 seconds after it has dropped below the speed of sound. At that point, it becomes extremely susceptible to atmospheric interference. Wind, temperature gradients, humidity, all of these factors compound exponentially. To achieve consistent accuracy at that range in those conditions would require not only exceptional marksmanship, but also an almost preternatural ability to read environmental variables in real time. And yet, Torres said, Staff Sergeant Vance scored 13 confirmed kills out of 17 long-range attempts, an accuracy rate of 76% at nearly 4 kilometers in a blizzard. The ballistics expert spread his hands. I cannot explain it. The mathematics say it shouldn't be possible. And yet here we are. On the final day of proceedings, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Stone was called to the stand. He entered the courtroom on crutches, his dress whites immaculate, his expression unreadable. Elena watched him take the oath, watched him settle into the witness chair, watched him avoid her gaze. Commander Stone, Morrison said, you were the on-scene commander during Operation Frozen Cash. In your professional opinion, did Staff Sergeant Vance's unauthorized actions contribute positively or negatively to the mission outcome? A long pause. Commander? Stone's jaw worked. His hands gripped the armrest of his chair. Finally, he spoke. Staff Sergeant Vance disobeyed my direct order. She compromised her assigned position. She engaged targets without authorization. Elena's stomach dropped, and she saved my life. Stone's voice was quiet but steady. She saved all of our lives. If she hadn't started shooting when she did, we would have died in that valley. Every last one of us. The courtroom went silent. When I told her that range was fantasy, Stone continued, I believed it. I believed it because everything I'd been taught, everything I'd experienced, told me that no one could shoot that far, that accurately, under those conditions. He finally met Elena's eyes. I was wrong. The panel deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Elena stood at attention, her heart hammering against her ribs. The lead officer, a full colonel with silver hair and a chest full of ribbons, cleared his throat. Staff Sergeant Elena Vance, this panel has reached its verdict. On the charge of willful disobedience of a direct order, we find you guilty. Elena's breath caught. However, the colonel continued, in consideration of the extraordinary circumstances, the immediate threat to American lives, and the unprecedented skill demonstrated under impossible conditions, this panel recommends administrative punishment in lieu of court-martial conviction. Staff Sergeant Vance will receive a formal letter of reprimand to be placed in her permanent file. Torres exhaled sharply beside her. Furthermore, the colonel said, based on a recommendation of Commander Stone and corroborating testimony from multiple witnesses, this panel is forwarding Staff Sergeant Vance's name for consideration for the Distinguished Service Cross. The courtroom erupted. Elena stood frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. A reprimand and a commendation, punishment and praise. The Army, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, had decided that she was simultaneously wrong and heroic. Later, outside the courthouse, Chief Morales found her sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. Hell of a day, he said, settling beside her. Hell of a month. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Morales reached into his jacket and produced a folder. Thought you might want to see this. The investigation results. Elena took the folder and opened it. Inside were surveillance photos, interview transcripts, bank records, and a name. Captain William Dorset, logistics officer at FOB Copperhead. He was on the take from a Russian PMC. Morales said. $50,000 per mission brief he leaked. They use the information to plan ambushes, avoid patrols, intercept supply convoys. 23 Americans died because of him over the past 2 years. Elena stared at the photo. Dorset was unremarkable, average height, average build, average face. The kind of man you'd pass in the hallway and forget before you reach the next door. Where is he now? Leavenworth. General court-martial convicted him last week. Life without parole. Morales took back the folder. His information is what positioned those mercenaries. He knew the exact route Stone's team would take, knew where you'd be posted, knew when the weather would ground air support. He knew everything, except that you'd disobey orders. Morales smiled grimly. That wasn't in any briefing. That was just you. Elena thought about this for a long moment. 18 men were dead because she refused to follow protocol, because she trusted her instincts, because she'd remembered a dead friend and sworn to never let it happen again. Chief, can I ask you something? Shoot. Would you have done the same thing? In my position? Morales considered the question. I've been a SEAL for 24 years. I've done things in the field that would make this tribunal look like a Sunday school meeting. And I've never, not once, regretted doing what I knew was right, even when it meant breaking the rules. He stood, brushing snow from his trousers. You want to know the difference between a soldier and a warrior? Vance? A soldier follows orders. A warrior follows their conscience. The army needs soldiers to function, but it survives because of warriors. He extended his hand. Elena shook it. If you're ever looking for a different kind of challenge, Morales said, the teams could use someone with your particular talents. I know some people who know some people. Are you trying to recruit me, Chief? Just planting a seed. He winked. Stay frosty, Staff Sergeant. He walked away, disappearing around the corner of the building. Elena sat on the bench a while longer, watching the snowfall, thinking about the future. 6 months later, she began her training at the Joint Special Operations Command. A year after that, she became the first female sniper attached to a Tier 1 unit. 3 years after that, she broke her own record. 19 confirmed kills in a single engagement, this time at 4.2 kilometers. During an operation in Syria that remains classified to this day. But that's a story for another time. The morning after the verdict, Elena visited the Army cemetery at Arlington. William Chen's grave was in Section 60, among the rows of white headstones marking those who'd fallen in Iraq and Afghanistan. She stood before it for a long time, saying nothing, remembering. He'd been 34 when he died, married, a daughter he'd never see grow up. A life cut short because Elena had followed orders instead of trusting her own judgment. I did it, Will, she said finally. I took the shot. The wind rustled through the bare trees, overhead. I'll keep taking it, as long as they need me, as long as there are people out there who need someone to break the rules to save them. She touched the cold granite of his headstone. That's my promise. She stood there until the cold drove her away, then walked back through the rows of graves toward the cemetery entrance. The sun was rising over Potomac, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. And somewhere out there, a new enemy who would learn that 3.9 kilometers was not fantasy. It was just the starting point. The flight deck of the USS Gerald R. 4 was chaos organized by protocol. F divided by a -18 as screamed off the bow catapults, while recovery crews worked the landing strip with balletic precision. Elena stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching controlled mayhem with appreciation born from years of joint operations. It had been 4 years since the frozen valley. For years since 18 impossible shots had changed everything. She was no longer Staff Sergeant Vance. Now she wore no rank at all, just black utilities with no identifying patches, no unit insignia, no indication of which branch of service she belonged to. The operators who worked alongside her called her Ghost. The commanders who tasked her called her by a number. The enemies she hunted never called her anything at all because they never saw her coming. The summons to the carrier had arrived 6 hours ago, encrypted and brief. Mission briefing. 0600, Admiral's quarters. Elena had learned not to ask questions beforehand. The answers would come soon enough, and speculation was a waste of mental energy. Rear Admiral Patricia Kenner met her at the hatch, her expression grim. "Walk with me." They moved through the narrow corridors of the supercarrier, past sailors who carefully avoided eye contact with the anonymous operator in their midst. Elena noted a heightened security. Marines posted at every junction, communications officers speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Something big was happening. 3 days ago, Kenner said, leading her into a secure briefing room, we lost contact with a reconnaissance team operating in the mountains of northern Iran. For operators, all agency assets, conducting surveillance on a suspected nuclear enrichment facility. A screen flickered to life, showing satellite imagery of a rugged mountain range. Red markers indicated last known positions. 48 hours later, we received this. A video replaced a map. For Americans in orange jumpsuits, kneeling in a concrete room. Behind them, masked men with AK-47s. The production quality was professional. Steady camera work, good lighting, clear audio. The Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force is claiming responsibility, Kenner said. They're demanding the release of 6 operatives currently held at Guantanamo. If their demands are not met within 72 hours. The video answered her unfinished sentence. A masked man stepped forward, reciting prepared remarks in Farsi. Subtitles scrolled across the bottom of the screen. These American spies will face justice under Islamic law. Their blood will be on their own hands. Elena's expression didn't change, but her mind was already racing through tactical calculations. Iran, mountain terrain, fortified facility, 72-hour window, massive political implications. What's the ask? Kenner shut off the video. The president has authorized a rescue operation. DevGru will handle the primary assault element, but we need overwatch. How far? The ridgeline overlooking the facility is 2.7 kilometers from the primary target building. Weather forecasts indicate high winds, possible sandstorms. Visibility will be intermittent at best. Elena considered this. 2.7 kilometers was child's play compared to her recent work. But Iran was a different beast entirely. Sophisticated air defenses, electronic warfare capabilities, a military that had been preparing for exactly this kind of incursion for decades. Rules of engagement? Liberal. Anyone with a weapon is a legitimate target. Priority is extraction of the hostages, but we need that facility neutralized regardless of outcome. The intelligence value of those surveillance records cannot fall into enemy hands. And if the hostages are already dead? Kenner's jaw tightened. Then we ensure their sacrifice means something. The insertion came at 0300 local time. A stealth helicopter, black, silent, nearly invisible to radar, deposited Elena on a rocky outcropping 3 kilometers from the target facility. She moved quickly through the darkness, establishing her position with the efficiency of someone who had done this 100 times before. The Iranian facility sprawled across a narrow valley, its concrete bunkers and guard towers illuminated by harsh floodlights. Elena counted 12 exterior guards for vehicle checkpoints and 2 rooftop observation posts. The main building where the hostages were being held was at the center of the complex, a squat structure with reinforced walls and minimal windows. A fortress. But every fortress had weaknesses. She keyed her radio. Overwatch in position. Visual on primary target. Count is 12 exterior, possibly double that interior. Recommend approach from northwest quadrant. Guard rotation creates 6-minute gap every half hour. Copy, Overwatch. Assault element is in position. Initiating in 5 minutes. Elena settled behind her rifle. A new variant of the Chetak, modified for specific demands of this environment. The scope incorporated thermal imaging, ballistic computers, and wind measurement systems that would have seemed like science fiction a decade ago. But the fundamentals hadn't changed. Breathing, trigger control, reading the environment, trusting her instincts. The assault began precisely on schedule. A shaped charge blew the northwest checkpoint, sending concrete and metal fragments spiraling into the darkness. Before the echo had faded, 6 DevGru operators were through the gap and moving toward the main building. Elena went to work. Her first shot dropped a guard reaching for an alarm panel. 1,800 meters through swirling dust, compensating for a crosswind that shifted 7 degrees during flight time. Her second took out a sniper setting up on the eastern tower. Her third eliminated a machine gun crew before they could bring their weapon to bear on the assault team. The Iranians were good, better than the mercenaries in Afghanistan, better than the cartels in South America, better than the militias in Africa. They reacted quickly, established defensive positions, attempted to coordinate a response. But they couldn't coordinate what they couldn't see coming. Elena moved through targets with methodical precision, clearing threats as the Devro operators pushed deeper into the compound. Communications intercepts suggested the Iranians were attempting to execute the hostages, a contingency Elena had anticipated. Assault lead, you've got 3 tangos converging on the detention block. Northwest stairwell, 60 seconds. Copy, Overwatch. We're Oscar Mike. She watched through her scope as the operators breached the detention block's outer door. Inside, gunfire erupted. Sharp, control bursts from American weapons interspersed with the distinctive crack of AK-47s. Tango down. Tango down. 2 remaining, barricaded in the holding cell. They've got a hostage. Elena shifted her position, searching for an angle. The concrete walls blocked her line of sight. She needed, a ventilation shaft, barely visible through the thermal imaging. It ran directly above the holding cell, providing a gap of perhaps 6 inches where the exhaust vented to the exterior. 2,450 meters, through a 6-inch gap, at a 23-degree downward angle. Assault led, I have a solution. Mark your position. Marking. We're 2 meters from the cell door. On my signal, breach and go left. I'll handle the right. A pause. Then, copy. Ready on your signal. Elena took a breath, exhaled, found the stillness. Execute. The door exploded inward. She fired. 2.2 seconds later, the first Iranian guard dropped, her round having threaded to the ventilation gap and caught him in the temple. The second guard spun toward the intrusion from the door and caught 3 rounds from the assault team. Hostages secure. All 4 alive. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Then, assault lead, you've got a QRF element approaching from the east. 12 vehicles, approximately 60 personnel. ETA 4 minutes. Copy. We're moving to extract. She covered their withdrawal, picking off threats as they emerged, suppressing positions that threatened the extraction route. The stealth helicopter reappeared like a phantom, dropping onto the landing zone just as the Iranian reinforcements reached the perimeter. Assault element aboard. Overwatch, your ride's incoming. 2 minutes. Copy. The RPG came from nowhere. Elena saw the flash, started to move, felt the world come apart around her. The explosion threw her 15 feet through the air. She landed hard on her left side, the same shoulder that still ached from the wound in Afghanistan. Pain lands through her entire body. Ribs, probably cracked. Left leg, definitely twisted. Head, ringing so loudly she couldn't hear her own thoughts. Through the dust and debris, she saw figures approaching. Iranian Revolutionary Guard, their faces obscured by cloth masks, their weapons trained on her position. Elena tried to reach for her sidearm. Her arm wouldn't respond. She tried to move her legs. They felt disconnected, like they belonged to someone else. The figures drew closer. She could see their boots now, the dust settling around them like snow. American sniper, one of them said. His English was heavily accented, but clear. You have killed many of my brothers tonight. The intelligence services will want to speak with you. Elena managed a bloody smile. Sorry, I don't do interviews. She felt the pistol before she remembered reaching for it. Her backup weapon, a SIG Sauer P3-20 strapped to her right thigh. The movement was pure instinct. 18 years of training, taking over when conscious thought failed. 3 shots. 2 down. Return fire shattered the rocks around her. She rolled, fired again, felt a bullet graze her calf. More pain, distant now, irrelevant. 2 more down, but more were coming. A dozen at least, maybe more. Her magazine was almost empty. Her body was failing. The helicopter was still. She didn't even know how far away anymore. This was it. This was how it ended. Elena Vance, codenamed Ghost, was to die in the Iranian mountains, alone and outnumbered for 1,000 miles from home. She'd made her peace with that possibility years ago. Every operator did. The only question was whether she would take enough of them with her to make it mean something. She raised her pistol, sighted on the nearest threat, prepared to fire, and then the night split apart. Minigun fire from a helicopter cut through the Iranian reinforcements like a scythe through wheat. Bodies tumbled and fell. Vehicles exploded. The darkness became a strobe of muzzle flashes and tracer rounds. Overwatch, this is Angel 6. Hold your position. We're coming in hot. The helicopter dropped out of the sky like an avenging angel. Its door gunners laying down suppressive fire, while operators fast-roped onto the mountainside. Elena watched through blurring vision as 4 figures in black advanced toward her, their weapons systematically eliminating any remaining threats. Chief Morales' face appeared above her, older now, more weathered, but still wearing that same grim smile. Heard you could use a hand. Chief. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? DevGru commander heard you were the Overwatch. Asked if I wanted in on the extraction package. He gestured to the operators securing the perimeter. We might have exceeded our mission parameters slightly. You came back for me. Like I said before, Vance. He lifted her carefully, mindful of her injuries. We don't leave people behind. The helicopter ride back to the carrier was a blur of pain and medical intervention. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of her lines being inserted, wounds being dressed, voices speaking in urgent tones. When she finally woke, she was in the carrier's medical bay, wrapped in bandages and connected to more machines than she could count. Admiral Kenner was standing beside her bed. The hostages are safe, Kenner said. All 4 extracted with minor injuries. The facility has been destroyed. The intelligence assets were recovered. Casualties: 2 operators wounded during the assault. 1 Kia. Kenner's expression softened slightly. And 1 stubborn sniper who apparently decided to fight half the Iranian military with a pistol. Elena tried to laugh and immediately regretted it. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The president is being briefed as we speak. The Iranians are already denying everything, claiming the facility was a research station that was attacked without provocation. Standard procedure. Kenner paused. 18 confirmed kills during the operation, plus the 4 you took out while wounded. 22 total. I wasn't counting. Kenner reached into her pocket and produced a small wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a bronze star. This isn't official yet. The ceremony will happen stateside once you're recovered. But I thought you should know. Elena stared at the medal, remembering another ceremony, another commendation, another night of impossible shooting in impossible conditions. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. How many times can someone break the rules before the rules stop meaning anything? Kenner considered this for a long moment. The rules exist to guide the majority. The soldiers who need structure to function, the commanders who need predictability to plan. But there are always exceptions. People who see further, think faster, act when others hesitate. She closed the box and set it on Elena's bedside table. The rules weren't written for people like you, Vance. They were written for everyone else. Elena was discharged from the medical bay 3 weeks later. The carrier had returned to port by then, docking at Norfolk to the kind of quiet, unofficial reception that characterized classified operations. No bands, no crowds, no media, just a handful of senior officers and a black SUV waiting to take her wherever she needed to go. She chose to walk instead. The Virginia morning was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that reminded her why she joined the military in the first place. Freedom, purpose, the chance to be part of something larger than herself. 22 years, 12 deployments, more confirmed kills than she could accurately remember. And now, standing on American soil with fresh scars and an uncertain future, she found herself at a crossroads. The doctors have been clear. Her injuries would heal, but her body was accumulating damage that couldn't be ignored forever. Another decade of this work, and she'd be wheelchair-bound by 50. Another 5 years, and she'd need to seriously consider the toll on her long-term health. Retirement was an option. Plenty of private security firms would pay handsomely for her expertise. Training positions existed at various military and intelligence facilities. She could teach the next generation, pass on what she'd learned, or she could keep going. Chief Morales found her at a coffee shop near the base, staring out the window at the passing traffic. Heard you walked out of medical. Needed the exercise. He slid into the seat across from her, ordered a coffee of his own, and waited. Elena appreciated that about him. Morales never pushed. He just existed, solid and patient, until you were ready to talk. "I've been thinking about the frozen valley," she said finally. "About that night." "What about it?" "Stone told me that range was fantasy. And he was right. According to everything we knew, everything the books said, everything the training taught, 3.9 kilometers should have been impossible. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't." Elena turned her coffee cup in her hands. And Iran wasn't impossible either. And neither was Syria or Yemen or any of the other operations they've sent me on since then. You're wondering when impossible actually starts. I'm wondering if it exists at all. If maybe the only limits are the ones we accept. She met his eyes. And if that's true, what does that say about all the people who accepted the limits? All the people who followed the rules, stayed in their lanes, did what they were told. Morales was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been doing this for 31 years. And in that time, I've worked with maybe a handful of people who could do what you do. Who could see a situation that everyone else called impossible and find a way through anyway. What happened to them? Most of them died. A few burned out. 2 of them are running training programs now, teaching the next generation." He shrugged. "And one of them is sitting across from me, wondering what the hell to do with the rest of her life." Elena smiled despite herself. "That obvious? I've been watching you for 4 years. I know the signs." He leaned forward. "Here's what I know about people like you, Vance. The ones who rewrite the rules. You don't stop because someone tells you to. You don't slow down because it makes sense. You keep going until there's nothing left to give, or until you find a reason bigger than the mission. What kind of reason? That's not my call. That's yours." He stood, tossing a few bills on the table. "But I'll tell you this. The world is full of people who need someone to take the impossible shots. Someone who doesn't accept limits, doesn't follow the rules, doesn't stop when the math says they should. Whether that's with a rifle or in a classroom or somewhere else entirely, that's up to you." He walked away, disappearing into the morning crowd. Elena sat alone, watching the sunlight play across the table, thinking about frozen valleys and mountain fortresses and all the shots she had yet to take. Somewhere, 18 mercenaries lay buried in unmarked graves. Somewhere, a logistics officer rotted in a military prison. Somewhere, 22 Iranian soldiers had joined them. And somewhere, an army sniper who should have died a dozen times over was still breathing, still fighting, still refusing to accept that any target was too far or any situation was truly impossible. The reprimand from that first court-martial was still in her file, a formal reminder that she had disobeyed direct orders. The commendations that followed, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, the Bronze Star of Valor, stood beside it like companion pieces, testaments to the complicated truth that heroism and disobedience were often separated by nothing more than outcome. Elena finished her coffee and stood. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if she'd pick up the rifle again or walk away forever. She didn't know if the world needed another impossible shot or if someone else would have to take it. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next time someone told her a target was too far, a mission was too dangerous, or a goal was pure fantasy, she would smile, settle behind the scope, and prove them wrong, just like she always had, just like she always would. Because 3.9 kilometers wasn't the limit. It was just the beginning.